Hello.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
This is Ghost Talk with 187 PI. Sit back and prepare yourselves for an adventure into the paranormal world with host Shelly Robertson and 187 PI research team. Ghost Talk is broadcasting live from Ohio's most haunted jail. Listen as they delve into the history of the old and haunted Paulding County Jail, where some of the residents still live within its walls. Learn about their ongoing research at the jail and abroad, investigation techniques, and their personal encounters. Here is your host of Ghost Talk and 187 PI founder, Shelly Robertson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ghost Talk Radio. I have an interesting show planned for you tonight, which is research cases within the old Paulding County Jail. I want to invite all my listening friends tonight to join me at chat at wbhm-db.com, where you can ask me any questions that you might have. Now, I first want to mention that anytime we talk about stuff here at the jail, about the jail, about the cases, about some of the ghosts, sometimes they fool around with our audio. I just want everyone to know, if you hear some weird things, don't get alarmed. It's out of our control. Everything at the station is running perfectly. So, to start off, I want to give everyone a little background into the jail and myself, which will lead into these baffling cases. Now, some of you may know, some of you may not know, how I first obtained this jail. It was back in the beginning of 2015. My brother Toby, who is also a member of the 187 PI research team, he called me one day and told me that he heard that the owners of the jail was wanting to sell it. To be honest, initially I really wasn't all that interested. However, Toby kept calling me like every single day on his way to work, trying to convince me to at least go look at it. I still really wasn't that interested. I told Toby, I'm sure the place needs a ton of work. I mean, it's 140 years old, right? I told him it's probably falling down on the inside. Still, he was persistent. So I gave in and I said, okay, we'll go and at least look at it. To be honest, I wasn't looking for any location at the time. I'm a licensed business here in the state of Indiana, where I live in Indiana. And I have a home office there where I do all my paranormal work. But I thought, what the heck? I got a hold of the owners, and they had a historical restoration company. Well, they still do. Anyway, they're located in Florida. So I called them up and asked them if they were indeed wanting to sell the jail. And they said they were wanting to sell it. They told me it was challenging trying to continue the restoration efforts from Florida. So I asked them if there was any way I could get a look inside. You know, I'd much rather look before you buy. You don't really want to buy sight unseen, you know. So I scheduled a look, and after we looked at it, I found it did need a lot of work. And I noticed that the building itself was still pretty sound, So we all talked about it, and we decided we would take on the project of restoring the building and use it for offices for my paranormal research team. Now, I will tell you, on this day, when we looked at the building, the ghosts were on their best behavior. There was not a noise, a creak, a voice, no, nothing. As a matter of fact, I had no idea prior to purchasing the building that it was haunted. It was the first visit to the building after purchases that we found out that it was haunted. Now, the very first day, while Toby and I were there looking through the building, trying to decide what we were going to work on first, because I mean, there was all kinds of stuff in there, and furniture and trash and just all kinds of everything. Well, we were looking around, and we heard what sounded like high-heeled shoes walking down the hallway. We look out in the hallway, and we didn't see anything at all. So we continue with our walkthrough, and we hear a voice come over the intercom system while we were in the first floor cell block. And mind you, everyone, there was no power to the building yet. So we kind of looked at each other, finished our little tour, trying to make our plan on what we were going to tackle first. When we were leaving out the side door, we heard disembodied voice, a huge, loud male voice, and it said, "Get out." Now, Toby and I looked at each other, and I started to laugh a little bit. I mean, I wasn't afraid or anything. I actually started to laugh. And I turned around, and I said, "Okay, we are leaving, but I will be back." And that's when I said, "Bingo, the building is haunted." So that's when I decided to make it a paranormal research center. Now, I believe that things come around the way they should, and I believe that things happen for reasons. Sometimes we don't always know what the reasons are at that moment, but when you look back on situations, you will find many times that things fall into place where they should. Even looking at what you may consider a bad situation, this happens for reasons as well. Maybe to teach you some sort of life lesson or to make way for something better to come. Now, some examples of this for me is when I decided to open up my business, my paranormal business. Upon thinking of a name for it, I chose 187 PI. And the 187 is a law enforcement code for homicide. And the PI is paranormal investigation. Shortly after that, I found the hearse that we drive, which right now it's being repaired because we hit a deer. But anyways, I had sheriff's supporter plates put on it. And mind you, I did all these things long before we got the jail. Then a year and a half later, I get the jail. And what is even more interesting about this is the address to the jail is 112 South Williams Street, but it is also State Route 111. Now, the law enforcement code for 112 is, and you're going to laugh at this, folks, the code for 112 is impersonating an officer. It's kind of funny that way. There has been a couple of different people with psychic gifts who have come here to the jail, and they told me that the ghosts here at the jail knew I was coming and that I was supposed to come, and they reserve a safe space for me here. And I do believe that. I found that safe space right away when going through the building, and that is a room on the second floor where I sleep. And all of this brings me to some cases. While I believe in part, which is why I'm here. Now, of course, there are a couple cases that I'm still not sure about, but nonetheless, I'm sure I will find out what the meaning of them is in due time. Now, I want to tell you, all my listening friends out there, some of the cases I may speak about tonight will include people who have passed away, of course, and there are still living family members. And I want to state that I mean no one any disrespect. I'm not speaking about these cases for any type of personal gain of my own. It's just what happens up here, and maybe through getting them out to you all, somebody will know somebody who will have a conscience and maybe weigh in on a couple of these cases. So I want to start off with tonight the Nancy Eagleson case. Now, this has been a huge unsolved murder case of a 14-year-old girl that happened back in 1960. Now, when I purchased this jail, I had no intention of poking around in any type of cases that happened here in Paulding County or cases that have passed through this jail. While I do feel extremely bad for Nancy's living family, I wasn't going to get involved with this. Well, I'll tell you, the ghost here had something else planned for me. So let me tell you a little bit about this case. On November 13th, 1960, Nancy Eagleson, who was 14 years old at the time, was walking home from the movies with her 5-year-old little sister. They get within 2 blocks of their house when a car pulls up and a man gets out, and he is struggling to get Nancy in his car. The little sister was trying to fight off the kidnapper, who threw her aside and sped off with Nancy. Of course, you can imagine the fright of the little sister. She runs home to get help, but of course Nancy was gone. She'd been kidnapped. It was later that night, about 5 miles away from her home. She was found by some coon hunters, and it stated in the report that she was naked, she had signs of having been raped, and she had been shot and killed. And she was off the edge of the road into a wooded patch. Now, I've heard that Sheriff John Keeler, I've heard folks say this. They say he said he knew who did it, but he didn't have evidence to charge the person. It's also been said one of his deputies was driving a car that matched a description of the kidnapper's vehicle. I will tell you, there have been so many rumors about who may or may not have murdered Nancy. Meanwhile, this case still remains unsolved. Now, supposedly, excuse me, there were evidence files that were sent off to a crime lab back at the time of the murder. However, the evidence never arrived at the crime lab, and it was deemed actually lost altogether. There has been rumors that someone got rid of the evidence. There has also been rumors of a couple of different people who were thought to have committed Nancy's murder. No one has been charged. Now, of course, the sheriff at the time, being John Keeler, he is now deceased, so he can't add anything to the investigation, at least as a living person. And we will get into more about that here in just a little bit. So now all these years have gone by, and the family is still wanting justice, of course. They are still